Today is the 10th of May, 2010. We are in Chatham, New York. My name is Wayne Clark. I'm with the New York State Military Museum and Veterans Research Center in Saratoga Springs, New York. Sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and date and place of birth, please?
My full name is Harold E. Williams. I was born January 23rd, 1923 at Valatie, New York.
Did you attend school in Valatie?
Yes.
And how far did you go in school?
8th grade.
And did you go to work at that point?
Yes, I quit and I went to work down in the factory in Valatie, New York.
And what did you do at the factory in Valatie?
Well, it was an old cotton mill and we just spun yarn.
And you did that until you took a job in the arsenal?
Now yeah, let's see, from the, I left there and I went to, yes, I went to the arsenal to work and I had to get permission to leave there. My mother signed for me to join the service.
At the arsenal, what kind of work did you do?
We made O-rings for the big long toms, the O-rings.
Oh, okay.
I did the rough cutting. They didn't trust me to do the good cutting.
And do you recall where you were when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Yes. Yes, I was in a drugstore in Albany, New York, and they were announcing it then. You know, that's where I first heard it. Yeah. Yeah.
Once that happened, did your life change at all from that moment on?
Well, you know, I was young and full of vinegar then. I guess all of us young guys, we wanted to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother didn't want me to go in, but I did sign my name, and then I had to get her signature on the papers to go in the service.
How old were you when you entered the service?
18. Going on 19. Yeah, I was going on 19.
So you enlisted in the Army.
Yeah.
Why did you pick the Army as opposed to the Navy, or?
I don't know. No particular reason.
Okay. Where did they send you for your basic training?
Basic training. Well, we went to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. From there, they shipped us out to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Was that your first time away from home?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What was it like at Fort Knox?
Fort Knox was rigorous training. It was armored infantry training. You had to learn to drive everything in case a guy got hurt or something, and we learned to drive everything. The tanks, the trucks, the jeeps, the half-tracks, a weapons carrier. But most of all, the ardent training was, we had to learn to do 20 words a minute on the Morse code.
Oh.
And we never got to use it overseas because we went to the 510s and they just had little crystal sets in them, and we didn't need, but we had them in our half tracks.
Now after your basic training, did you go on to any other specialized training after that?
After the basic training from Fort Knox, they sent me down to Camp Campbell, Kentucky, and did some more training there. And from there,
what kind of training did you get there?
Camp Campbell, mostly walking, a lot of marching, a lot of hiking. Yeah. And of course the basic, you know, you one of the fences and over the bars and that, they give you that sort of training. But nothing like Rangers get.
And after Fort Campbell, what happened next?
Fort Campbell, Kentucky, I was sent to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, and sent overseas. And
did you go as a replacement or with the whole unit?
No, I went. We didn't know where we were going. When we got to Africa, this 62nd was already up in the line, and some guys got hurt, and we were both radio operators, and they needed them in the forward observation. So they just took Jackson and I, a fellow that we went through basic together. We wound up in Africa together.
Huh.
We wound up in the same outfit together.
Now, did he go through the same training?
Everything yeah, Jackson and I, yeah.
And how did you get overseas?
I forgot the name of the ship, but I know it was rough.
Did you go in a convoy or single ship?
No, I think we had a convoy.
All right, and we were talking about.
Going over.
Yes. Did you get seasick at all?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah, the mess hall was a mess. Yeah, very sick. We went into the and we got into the Mediterranean, and boy, we had all kinds of cruisers and things around us, because that was the old submarine alley, you know.
Uh-huh.
And we sailed up to Oran, and we got there, and the French, the French, what do they call them again? They were, I don't know, they were on all any side that was there at the time.
Oh, was that
that's the way they were.
I think they called them the Vichy.
Yeah,
French,
the Vichy, yeah, and
Vichy French.
they killed a few of the guys around us. And when we went into Iran, their bodies were still floating in the harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Rangers went in and took care of them real quick. Yeah. Glad I didn't have to do that.
So once you landed,
then that's when we joined. Then we went down to what's the famous Casablanca, down in that area.
Yeah.
And that's where they were. That's where they were picking men out of different units for the fill in the gap for people. Our outfit got hit hard.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't prepared for the Germans were superior to us actually there, because they had the big long weapons, and at that moment we didn't have the long toms and that, and they had the big tanks, you know, that Tiger tank and that, and at that time we didn't have nothing that would knock a Tiger tank out, but that didn't last very long.
Mm-hmm.
We got big equipment, and then from there we went through Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, right on to the Bay of Bizerte in Africa.
Did you have any contact with the enemy during?
Oh yeah. I was telling my wife one time, when they let Jackson and I out, they took us up in a Jeep and just dropped us off.
Mm-hmm.
And here was some 105s already there. These are the ones with no top on them, no turret, I mean. You know, it's all open with 105, and they call them a priest tank, because they had a platform in the back that had a 50 caliber, like a place a preacher would stand and preach. And I guess they lost a few of them, and they needed radio operators, so they dropped Jackson and I off. We didn't know where to go, and I hadn't got out of the Jeep 5 minutes, and along came these Stukas, and they called it Stuka Alley up there. And I ran and jumped in a hole with this guy. I didn't even have a foxhole dug, and I'll tell you, I wet my pants. That's how scared I was. I mean, that was not a good way to be broke in. The minute we got out of the Jeep, I didn't know what it was, and somebody hollered, "Get down," and I ran with this guy into his hole. I didn't have a foxhole dug, but I tell you, it didn't take me long to dig one afterwards.
Did they shoot up the Jeep?
I don't know. The Jeep was going down. I don't know. I can't tell you.
Okay.
He took off. Yeah.
And then you got settled into the unit?
Yeah, I got settled in the unit, and then we went through Kasserine Pass, El Guitar, all the way through Tunisia, and of course, you know, the Jerry's had a lot of planes at Tunisia, but our Air Force did a job on them. They crucified them. They got rid of them.
What was your daily routine like?
Well, up until that time, I had never been out with the infantry yet. My first time out with the infantry was not in Africa. I never went out with the infantry in Africa, but when we got to Sicily, we did. Yeah, we were the only LST in Sicily that took casualties in that invasion.
Mm-hmm.
Our LST, we had 98 guys got wounded. Some of them were killed, but most were wounded on the boat I was on. It got on a sandbar and I couldn't get off.
Now, how many guys were on the boat?
Well, our 62nd outfit had probably about, but they had the medical outfit. They had a couple of us radio operators and that, but all the rest were infantry. And they went to let down one of the boats, and one of the davits, that there's one on each side that lets them down, broke,
Mm-hmm.
and it went headlong, and the guys went in, a lot of them drowned. A fellow from our outfit went over the edge and got some of them out. He didn't know how to swim, but yeah, Ed Dean, I never forgot that. Yeah.
And you were with the 62nd Armored Field Artillery
Yes.
Battalion?
Yes, yeah, all from Africa right through to the end of the war. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what about your casualty rate amongst, you were in a platoon size?
Well, I was in a battery. See,
Yeah.
we had headquarters A, B, C, and S, service battery. We had 800 men in the battalion.
And what battery were you in?
I was in the headquarters. That was where all the forward observation was in that headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All the communications were at headquarters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what type of work were you actually doing yourself?
Well, when I went out in the infantry, I just carried a 510 radio,
Mm-hmm.
and
What kind of personal weapon did you carry?
I carried a little carbine, because when you carried them, one in each hand, there was a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of the carbine?
Well, carbine wasn't any good when you were at a distance. I mean, it was for close-up and that, but carbines was not the weapon for long distance or anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in fact, when I was out with the Lieutenant French one day, they were taking ground and they were firing just ahead of us, and our batteries fell short and they were hitting around us, and we had to call to cease fire. And then when we got going again, where the infantry were, they were laying all over the place. I picked up an M1. You know, that was the rifle for the Army, the M1 for the infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept that with me because I could put it in a half track when we traveled, and I'd have it. Yeah. But,
What about, what kind of clothing did you wear in Africa? Did you wear the regular?
just the old fatigues.
fatigues?
Oh, yeah.
The heat must have been unbearable, though, wasn't it?
The heat and sand fleas. Oh,
Uh-huh.
they were horrible. Sand fleas. Terrible.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. You couldn't lay nothing down in Africa because these Arabs, they would steal everything. Yeah, you couldn't lay nothing down. I mean,
Now, did you have much contact with the civilian
as
population?
we went through the villages, I went through one village one day. There was only 3 or 4 buildings in it, and believe it or not, on one of the buildings hung a Coca-Cola sign. It was unbelievable. Here we laughed about it. Coca-Cola here. Yeah.
Now, what kind of rations were you living on?
Sea rations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whatever. Meat and vegetable stew, meat and vegetable hash, and that's where I got the name Corn Willie from. They called me Corn Willie because I love corned beef and hash, and the guys hated it. I liked it, so they nicknamed me Corn Willie.
Huh.
In fact, General Bennett or Colonel Bennett, whenever he wrote to me, he'd always say Corn Willie. Yeah.
Now, you guys didn't have a mess hall?
Oh no, we never
No.
got no hot food when
No.
we were out. The only time we got hot food was when we'd get a rest and the sea battery would come up.
Uh-huh.
And of course the cooks were in sea battery and they'd make a hot meal for us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But they some of the times they'd come up and things would happen and they'd have to put the kitchen away and head back. Yeah.
And then you mentioned landing in Italy?
Sicily.
Sicily, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Sicily. Gale of Sicily.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Licata.
And you guys were under heavy attack?
Well, that's where, that's where the airborne, they shot them out of the sky. They didn't know what they were. They lost a lot of airborne. They terrific anti-aircraft fighter. They thought it was Germans, but it wasn't. It was our own men.
Uh,
But on our boat, because Colonel Bennett mentioned that to me when I went down to see him, that you were the only LST boat in the whole landings that got stuck on a sandbar, and that sandbar right above us was a cliff.
yeah.
Later on, it reminded us a little of Omaha, the bluffs, you know, but this was a high one, and the Jerrys would come over it. You wouldn't see them till they got over it, and they were on you.
Yeah.
And but they never hit the boat direct, but they strafed it terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of guys got hurt.
Now, any contact with the Italian army at all?
When we got in, they were very friendly. They were ready to give up. The Germans left them to hold the fort, but they didn't put much resistance up.
Mm-hmm.
No. In fact, they were glad to see us.
And how much time did you spend there?
Just a month. That really ended quick. That wasn't a long campaign. We ended up near Palermo, and everybody got a pass. And that was the time I met the only person back in the United States that I knew in civilian life. He was in the 9th Infantry Division. His name was John Puzio from Brainerd, and we were walking down the street, and we looked at one another, and I said, "John Puzio," and he says, "Harold Williams," and we gave each other a hug, and I didn't see him again after that. But up in Belgium, I heard the 9th Division was there, and I went looking for him. We had a rest period, and I went looking for him, and the young captain told me that he'd got killed in a bunker.
Oh.
So when I got back, I went to see his parents.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Puzio from Brainerd, New York.
Mm. That must have been hard for you, wasn't it, going to visit his family?
Well, I'll tell you what happened when I went there. I asked, it was raining a little bit, and I asked the fellows, "Do any of you fellows here know Johnny Puzio?" And they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm a good old friend." "Oh, are you a relative?" I said, "Well, I'm an old friend. We grew up together." He said, "Well, go over and see that officer over at the tent." And I went over, officer, he looked like a kid, young, you know.
Uh-huh.
And of course, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They get up the ranks quick in the infantry. And he asked me a couple of questions and that, and I said to him, "Yeah, I'd like to see John. We grew up together." He says, "Well, I'm sorry." He says, "John got killed and the other day in a bunker." And I says, "Well, is there anything I could take back to his parents?" He says, "We've already got his stuff together and we've sent it
Uh-huh.
back." So I went to see him after the war up in, they live up in Brainerd.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they're gone now.
Mm.
Yeah, John was the only guy I knew in the United States that I met during the war. Huh.
So what happened next?
After Sicily, you know, we thought we were going to Italy, but when we got on this British ship, we knew this was not a troop ship, and we had escort all the way going. They dropped depth bombs all night long while we were traveling up the Med. When we got to the big rock at Gibraltar, they pulled us in a while, and the British put on a big display there. That was one of the most heavily defended terra firmas in the world at that time, because that's where all the ships went in with the weapons and stuff for Russia and that, and for us too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And from there we went to England, and once we got out, they stopped our escort because I guess we were going fast enough, and the subs were pretty well under control then. And we went up to Glasgow, and they took us to a little town of Banbury, England. That's where we took our ease for a while, and then after that they started sending us down on the coast, you know, down to Slapton Sands and that, where that was all assault training and that.
So did you have any idea what was coming up?
Well, we knew something was coming up, but it was kept very secret.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, while we were on maneuvers, now I did not see this, but we found out about it afterwards. 7 of our LSTs were attacked by German U-boats. You know, they came in, they snuck in, and they got there were 700 men drowned, and the reason why they drowned is their life preservers, they had them around their waist, and they weren't supposed to. They were supposed to have them up under their armpit, and they were face down. They drowned in the water.
Sure.
Eisenhower was furious about that. Oh, he was furious. But they kept it a secret because they on account of morale.
Mm-hmm.
But that happened while we were on maneuvers, you know. I'm just glad our ship wasn't on the tail end because they picked the tail end of them.
Well, I guess that happened. That happened at D-Day too. I heard a number of.
Oh yeah, they snuck in, but most of them got it though before they got away because boy, 3,000 ships out there,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them had guns on them. So
Yeah. No, but I meant the life jacket.
Oh, the life jackets
yeah,
you're talking about.
Yeah, they had them around their waist.
Well,
when,
that's why when that happened, it spread like wildfire. And of course it saved a lot of lives at Normandy. They'd done the same thing there. They'd have drowned. Yeah. Now, when you got off in the LST and you went down the ropes, those landing craft infantry, they'd sway back and forth, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you missed one of them, you went down. A lot of guys went down and never came up.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't have to do that. I was on a Rhino, a big flat, just like this Ford, flat, big Rhino. And we had all the big, we had a lot of guns and stuff on it, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of 50 calibers, which they wanted on shore.
Yeah.
And they didn't have D-Day. They didn't have, if it wasn't for the Navy, boy, God bless the Navy. Some of them guys really wanted to get into it. And they even wanted to court-martial some of them because they disobeyed orders and got in too close, you know, with those
Mm-hmm.
cruisers and that, boy. I'll tell you, the Navy saved our bacon.
When you landed at D-Day, what beach did you land on?
Red Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was
Fox.
Omaha.
Yeah, Omaha. There was Red Fox and Easy, what do they call that? Easy something to the right of us. I know we were on the left of the 29th Division, were on the right of us.
Mm-hmm.
And the 16th Regiment of the 1st Infantry was on the left side. And we went in together. But when my Rhino started to go in, they came out with a little boat, and the guy had a big bullhorn, and boy, the language, he was yelling at us, get that thing off of here. He said, you're drawing fire on the infantry, you know, because they were picking off everything.
Yeah.
There wasn't nothing safe. There was no safe spots. And,
What was it like for you? Was the noise deafening?
oh boy, when those big guns on the Arkansas went off, oh my, Texas now. Boy, it seemed like the boat was going to lift right out of the water,
Mm-hmm.
you know. The waves would come up from them. Boy, what a powerful thing they are. Boy, to be on the end of that. Boy, well, we saw later on what it did too. All over the fields everywhere were Germans.
Mm-hmm.
They never touched the beach.
Mm-hmm.
We never had no protection on the beach at all.
Mm-hmm.
There was no foxholes or, bomb holes.
Well,
There was nothing.
Were there a lot of casualties that you saw coming in?
They were floating back toward us, yeah.
Mm.
The waters were red in some places. Yeah. If I had landed, I say me, if those of us on that Rhino had landed when we should have, well, I don't know. Only God knows.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd be here today. Because they were hitting little LCIs, landing craft infantry, these little Higgins. Higgins, you know, they aren't that big, but they're good size. They hold 40. Let's see, the one that Colonel Bennett went in on had 44 infantrymen and the young coxman, and they all died, but General, I keep calling him General, he was Colonel then.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the one that was taking this infantry LCI in. He was the highest ranking officer left alive on that first landing on that beach they were on. All the rest were, his best friend, Colonel McQuaid, got hit. They never even found his body. But Colonel Bennett he should have gotten the Congressional Medal of Honor that day. We all agree with that. But he got the DSC for it.
Mm-hmm.
He got hit twice. But if we had landed when we should have, I don't know. I don't think I'd be here.
Now, when you jumped off the boat, were you in deep water or?
Well, no. When we came in, before, as it was coming in, we got almost to the beach and ready to drop, and here's the guys laying all over the place, and nobody wanted to let the ramp down on them, so a couple of guys from Rhino jumped off and ran up, and they set them on one side so we could let the ramp down, because we didn't want to let the ramp down.
No.
They were all over the place.
Now,
Unbelievable.
did your unit stay together, or was everybody
We
separated?
were all scattered. Nobody
Uh-huh.
knew where. It almost seemed like that we were deserted, you know. That Colonel Bennett, God bless him, boy, he had the job of going up and down that beach and exposing himself time after time. He came upon a young captain who was digging in the sand, and he put his hand on his shoulder and he says, "I need you." He says, we gotta get these guys together." He wouldn't even get up. He just kept digging. So Colonel Bennett went on. I didn't see this, but I heard about it afterwards. And then he came upon his squad.
Okay. And what were you doing at that point? Were you just trying to get dug in?
No, we wanted to get, what we wanted to do is get out, up the ravine as quick as we could. And because at that time, the Germans were firing blindly. They're fort observers. They got them. The Navy got the towers that these observers were in, where they were forwarding, you know, the relay, the coordinates where to go and that. But the Navy got them, and that helped out a lot. So they fired blindly, but they couldn't miss. When they were still hitting the beach, so they couldn't miss, even firing blindly. But you know, the equipment and stuff, and there was a truck picking up the guys, you know.
At what point were you and your unit able to assemble and?
Well, not till the next day, the 7th. We really didn't, nobody knew where anybody was. You know, it was such a disarray, it didn't seem like the American Army, you know. A lot of people don't know in America that we happened to pick a place where the Germans were waiting for us. They were on maneuvers. No, we didn't find this out till a day later, because when they went up the bluff to take the big gun, which I wasn't in on that, but my buddy was, when they took the big gun, some of the guys, they had flamethrowers and that, and even when they surrendered, they were such, I don't know, hatred. I mean, it was not easy to describe, but anyway, he told Colonel Bennett at that time, the German officer said, if you'd have waited till tomorrow, we'd have been gone. They were on maneuvers, and they were elite. These were all seasoned. They didn't have single machine. They had the Bofors, two machine guns, and they had every inch of the beach zeroed in. Every inch of it was. They knew where everything was. And the guy down here in the park, he could tell you a lot more about this than me. He was in the Rangers, and they only had a few guys really got left to fight when they went up that cliff and that scaled it. He lives down here in the park. We meet quite often. Yeah, they saved a lot of our lives by getting the big guns. And then when they did find some of them, they were duds. They weren't the real guns, but they found them after a while. The Rangers did, and that stopped that raining down on us. The big guns that they were overlooking the big Duhok, Point Duhok. It was. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't have that job to do.
So the next day you were able to assemble with your unit.
Yep. The next day, the 7th, we went right up over the bluff. In fact, here a couple of years ago, my son took me down. 3 years ago it was, down to see Colonel Bennett, or General Bennett. He stayed in after the war. He got these 4 stars of that. Sent him all over. Sent him back to Czechoslovakia, where we ended up. Sent him to Korea, DMZ, and that. But anyway, we went down to see him, and he was telling me that this one German officer had told me, he said, Herr Colonel, you should have waited until tomorrow. Then you would have more men left alive. And of course, he wanted to blow his head off, you know. A lot of anger, a lot of anger. But then it was, boy, it was, well, you know what St. Lo, you've heard about St. Lo, that was a bad one up through there, the breakthrough. We were in on that. In fact, up there is where a lot of our planes killed our own boys. They bombed it, and both Germans and Americans. You know, and in fact, one of the a general got killed up there. Forgot his name now, but he did get killed up there. The Air Force felt bad about it, but dropped them in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And then there was the breakthrough, the Valatie. We didn't know where we were. He had us out ahead of Germans, and Germans were behind us, and we were ahead of them, and it was crazy. You didn't know where anybody was.
What was your unit suffering heavy casualties at that point?
Oh yeah, we lost a few guys compared to the bigger outfits like the infantry and that. You know, we, in comparison to them, we didn't lose like they did.
How were you losing them? Through artillery fire or snipers?
Most of the time, a lot of snipers, and also a couple of guys stepped on mine. Had one guy with a half track drove over it, and Valatie, he got killed on that, and no safe places. Yeah.
Now, were you riding in a vehicle or were you on foot?
Always rode in a vehicle until that we caught up with the infantry, and then if they wanted a forward observer to go out and a radio man, we'd go out with the infantry when they attacked. But don't forget, this is a lot of armored stuff going on now, and the Germans didn't have time to really regroup or anything. We were pushing the daylights out of them, and every time they'd go through these villages, you'd see dead people laying all over with a machine gun as they go through.
You mean civilians?
Oh yeah, because that's their way of saying bye-bye, you know. Yeah.
And what part of the year was this at that point?
This is July when we were going through France, and then Paris was liberated, and we got a chance to have a rest for a while, and they were picking guys out, 2 men from each battery. We had 5 batteries, so that'd be 10 men each week would get a chance. We were in the rest area, bivouac area, and they'd send us back to Paris for rest and recreation, you know. And the fellow that, just before this happened, we were somewhere in France, and I can't tell where it was, but I know Ray and I, we decided we'd go in this German's hen house. We were going to get some eggs. So we went in there, and we got some eggs, and then the Germans come out and yelling at us, so we gave them sea rations and that quieted them right down. And Ray and I were cooking the eggs. I'll never forget it. We had a little stove like that, and we were pushing it up and down to get the air in it, because you turn the jet and put the match on, burn gas.
Yeah.
And we were going to boil these eggs, and we were arguing over who was going to get the extra egg, and all of a sudden the shot rang out, and he hollered, "Good, Willie," says, "I'm hit." He says, "I'm hit." I says, "Where?" He said, "Well, right in the groin." He says, "I'm hit." So he hollers at me to go get a medic, and I'm running all over and hollering at me, "You damn fool, get down." But I had to get a medic for the guy, you know, he was hurt. And he said, just as they took him away in the Jeep, he says to me, he was our section leader, he was a sergeant, because I'd go with him out with the officer and that. See, you used to have an officer, a non-com, and then a radio operator.
Now, what rank were you at that point?
T5.
Which was a corporal?
Yeah, and I had to laugh. He said, "Willie," he says, "will you do me a favor?" He says, "You know, we've been talking about going to Paris together." He says, "Just take care of my 45 and my bedroll," because he carried a 45. Ray Singleton was it. And he got decorated highly on Omaha. Ray did. But anyway, they took him off, and doggone, if they didn't have a few weeks later, he came back to the outfit, and they picked names, and doggone it, his name and my name were picked together in the battery of all the other men. We too were picked, and we went to Paris, and we were supposed to stay 3 days and come home, and we didn't come home. And boy, I'll tell you, how we thank God that they didn't call them into the line while we were gone. we get it when we got back. They threatened us to dig some hole. They threatened, of course, well, they did everything, but nothing happened.
Now, when you were out in the field, how often did you get a change of clothes?
Whenever you had the opportunity is all I can say. It's not like them, the poor infantry.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk about the infantry so much, it's because I have a deep respect in my heart for them boys. They're the real heroes of the war, is the infantry. Mm-hmm. They do the dirty work. Yeah, I'll never forget one day in France, and we were out with an infantry unit, and I can't tell you where it was, but again, our outfit fired short, and they were coming right in on us. We had to ask them to cease fire, and they did, and then we got up and started going again with the infantry, and we were walking along this little path, and here's two guys, and they were crying and hugging each other and screaming and that. So I don't know who the guy was. I said, what's the matter with them? He said, some Jerry just lobbed a grenade in their tank and they're blind. Boy, I'll tell you, that bothered me for the longest time. Puts the fear of God in you. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about the Bulge?
Well, the Bulge, that's the 30th Infantry that we were supporting during the Bulge. We had just gone through the Sicily line up around, what's the name of it? Through Malmedy. Malmedy was where they massacred the 101st Airborne, the Germans did. What was the name of that? Monschau. M-O-N-S-C-H-E-A-U, I think it was. Monschau. That was up in Hürtgen Forest. That was right where the Bulge was. Well, when the pincer hit, we were in a little small town. I think it was just outside of Hürtgen Forest, and they bypassed us, but they caught the infantry full. They were thousands taken prisoners, and a lot of them were killed in that. But we didn't know it. We didn't even know it, that we were pincered in. They went right by us. Again, God was on our side. Yeah. We couldn't believe it the next day when we heard the news, you know. It was, the tops of the trees were all cut right off from these airbursts, you know. That's what they did it for. They cut the tops of the trees off, and then when they hit with the artillery, then the air blast would go off in air and then scatter to the ground, and that was a sloppy looking mess up there in Hürtgen Forest.
Now, what were your living conditions like? Were you living and sleeping in the vehicles or underneath?
Well, if we could, we'd sleep under a little pup tent or under a vehicle, or if we could find a house where you could think it was safe. But you had to be careful because some guys got killed just going in. They booby-trapped them, the Germans did, you know, when they left, because they knew that people, the infantry or the armies would be looking for a place to sleep, so you had to be careful of that. But a lot of times, well, especially if you were on guard duty at night, you'd go underneath you're supposed to stand up, but a lot of us would go under one of the 105s, you know, and you felt a lot safer there than standing up in the dark, because it seemed like everything moved at night.
Now, what about your clothing and equipment? Did you think it was adequate for the cold weather?
We can't complain, but I cannot say that for the infantry. They didn't. But we can't complain. We did pretty good.
Did you suffer from frostbite or anything?
Only my ears. My ears, my gut touch, but no, nothing like the infantry. No. You know, in fact, some guys would, in the foxhole, they'd take and put these empty casings from the shells, put them on the ground, and then put a blanket over it or something, and then sleep on that, because, you know, that was better than in a pup tent. It was warmer anyway. No, we used a lot of the old houses and that, and then of course there were towns we took where they retreated, and it looked pretty safe. One town we were at, this was in Belgium, yeah, in Belgium. I'll never forgot this. This guy invited me to stay in his house. They were so glad to see the Americans, and I stayed there, and he invited me down in the cellar, and I went down, and he had a whole row of kegs, and they were all full of vino, wine and that. And I had a couple of glasses with him. We stood there talking. He says, "Come here." He took me over to a spot, and he says, and I wondered what he was talking about. He said, he moved the dirt a little bit. It was fresh dirt.
Mm-hmm.
It was a grave. It was a German.
Oh.
He invited him down and got him drunk. He told me. He says, "I got him drunk." And he says, then I knifed him. And that's how much they hated the Germans. I never forgot that as long as I lived.
Huh.
Yeah, he was a little old Belgian guy, but he hated Germans. Yeah. He told me they had molested his family and that. And, yeah,
How long were you in Belgium for?
not very long.
Mm-hmm.
No. And, Holland was only a short time. It was in Belgium, you know, where the infantry or the paratroopers went in and got that what they call the flying buzz bomb.
Oh yes.
Yeah, the paratroopers went in and got rid of that. Yeah, those things would go over, you know, as long as they'd go to London and they'd quit, and when they quit, they were coming down. They were out of fuel. But
Did you ever see one of those?
Oh yeah,
over?
we saw them several times go. But that's when the paratroopers were really after them, boy. They finally got them. I think they went in at night and got the whole mess. They blew that thing to smithereens. I didn't see it, but they blew it up. Yep, a lot of guys have a lot of dirty work that thank God you didn't have.
Where did you go after the Bulge?
After the Bulge, well, it didn't last too long after the Bulge. We had a few towns to go through and that, but we wound up, you know, in Czechoslovakia. The war was coming to an end,
Let me ask you, do you recall where you were when you heard about the death of President Roosevelt? He died in he died in April.
April, yeah. Where
in the war with Germany ended in May.
I think we were just ending up in Germany. Yeah, that was what, 1945?
45, yeah.
Yeah, I think we were, because, you know, when I went overseas, Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill were all in Casablanca.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to see them. Some of my outfit did. They went back as honor guards or something, but I didn't get to see them. But they were there when I landed in Iran. They were down in Casablanca. And I can't. Where were we when? I think we were up in the Bulge in that area when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
When he died, I think it was around there. Yeah, it's hard to remember so long ago.
But you ended up in Czechoslovakia?
Yeah, Pišić, Czechoslovakia. Yeah, we had quite an experience there. The Russians, they came down, and they were opposite of us, of the, what's the Elbe River?
The Elbe, yes.
Yeah, Elbe. They were on the opposite side of us. We were on this side, they were on the other, and that was the border. And neither the Americans or the Russians were to invade each other's territory.
Now, did you get there before the Russians, or
Yeah,
were they?
yeah, we got there first. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you something that happened. The Russians decided that they want to come through our area because they were pilfering houses, they were raping women, they were doing everything. The Russians were like savages, and our colonel told them they couldn't go beyond the demarcation line. This was our territory, and we would not go into their territory. But he insisted. So he says, if you insist, he says, I've got all my 105s right behind me. He says, if you cross the line, we will fire. Well, thank God, that Russian officer was smart enough to back off. Because I don't know what would have happened then. Because that was not a good situation. Because Colonel told him, don't you cross that line. Because he went up in a Piper Cub and flew along the Elbe, and he could see down in the villages where they had gathered people together,
Yeah.
the Russians. And as soon as they got them together, they massacred them. They just shot them.
They were civilians they were
They were
killing?
civilians, oh yeah. They'd round them up and say, we'll go, you have to get your orders while we're here. And when they get them, people would all go, you know.
Yeah.
And when they get them, they just slaughter them. And we didn't do nothing. It was a terrible thing.
Did you have any direct contact with any of the Russians yourself?
Oh yeah, I got a picture of us arguing with the Russians. Yeah, they wanted to come over and get chickens. We mixed in, but we weren't supposed to go across the river.
Yeah.
So we went one night and we kind of borrowed a Jeep. Now, picture this, the Jeeps are all locked in the motor pool.
Yeah.
The war's over. And they were all in the motor pool. So we took one night and we went into Pilsen. That's the big beer city. Pilsen's a big beer city. And we backed up to the dock, and Sandro Bly from Ringtown, Pennsylvania, he spoke French, English, German, and Russian. He spoke 4 languages. And he went up on the dock and asked the guy if we could buy a couple kegs of beer. And the guy said to him, no, he says he said, no, he says, Russia, they bought all of it. And he says, no, they don't buy nothing. He said, they didn't buy it, they're taking it. Well, anyway, we saw him arguing, and we couldn't wait to get out of there, because we didn't have no. They had 40 submachine guns on their shoulders. The war is over. We didn't have no weapons at all. We just went in to get some beer. But thank God that we got out of there. Couldn't wait to get out of there. No, they wouldn't give us any. He said, you know, they're going to steal everything you got someday, he told them, this Czech guy. And by golly, isn't it true? What they did, remember they begged America to come and help them. Yeah. But anyway, we got another mess we got out of. Yeah.
And you were in Germany when the war ended?
Actually, we were down. Yeah. Well, we came down when the war ceased. We kept going, and we went down into Czechoslovakia. And that's where we ended up, because we were supposed to link with the Russians. Yeah. Patton had his way. They'd have never even got into Germany, but they did. But,
was there a lot of celebration when the war ended?
Well, it's hard to really say our feelings, you know, when you think, am I going to get to go back home, you know? Yeah, we weren't really in a place to celebrate. Now, VJ in Japan, when that ended.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, we were in England. We got shipped back to England after the war was over.
Were there rumors that you guys might end up going to the Pacific?
Oh yeah, we were all slated. Oh yeah, so was the 1st Infantry and a lot of the old vet outfits. Oh yeah, we were all slated for there. But thank God we didn't have to go. Yep. Oh, that was the big rumor. That went through like wildfire. Everybody thought we were going, the combat units, you know, be going to Japan.
Was there celebration at that point when the war was over?
Oh yeah, you guys, well, just think, I think of how, I wasn't married, see, but a lot of the guys were. And I look back and I think how happy they were, like Colonel Bennett, he couldn't wait to get home and see his beloved vets, you know. He's quite a guy. By the way, there's a picture of the general.
Hold it up in front of you and I can zoom in on it with the camera.
Okay. There's General Bennett. He was our colonel in World War II. He took us into Omaha Beach on D-Day.
Now he's the gentleman in the suit?
Yeah. He's the commandant of that's West Point.
Oh, okay.
That's West Point Academy.
Okay.
And that's my son taking the picture. He's not in it. But...
All right.
Yep. My son took that picture. He writes, Corn Willie, we've been together a long time from December 43 to now. Your work as a forward observer, and you know that this position put you and your crew in harm's way. You were at risk all the time, as we all were. Still, you did your job and never complained. God bless you, Don Bennett.
Nice.
Yeah, he autographed that book for me.
Let's see the cover of the book. Okay, got it.
Now this one here is the Omaha Beach one. Our pictures are in this one. We have some pictures in here
Okay.
of Omaha Beach and that. That's the story of Omaha Beach right there.
Trying to get it in focus here. Okay.
Now here's page 39 on here. Here's 4 of us from the 62nd here. 4 of us, our pictures in there, right where my finger is, right here.
Up top?
Yeah, right here.
Okay. Let me see if I can zoom in. I'm getting, yeah. I think camera's not letting me zoom in too close. All right.
You need to get closer.
I'm afraid I can't get in any closer.
The French Patriots sent this to me. One of the French forces in the interior.
Yeah.
He sent this to me, and he says, "Thank you for our freedom. God bless you." His parents were some of the undercover in that.
Oh.
This book was not written by an author. These are all men and all pictures of all the guys that landed D-Day in here. There's no end of pictures in here of guys that landed D-Day. That's quite a book. Yeah.
When were you sent back to the States?
I went back to the States, let's see, we sailed into Boston Harbor on the 20, I think the 19th, I'm not sure, I think it was the 19th, or I can't remember now the date that we actually landed at Boston.
Now, did you go back with the entire unit, or?
No, everybody was, you know, this fellow Jackson that I told you about, we took our basic training together at Fort Knox. And when that was over, they sent us to different places. I went to Camp Campbell. And they sent him there too, but I didn't know that till one day we were walking down the street and here he is. And then we're split up. Now we don't see each other until Oran, North Africa.
Mm-hmm.
We wound up in the same outfit together. When the war was over in Czechoslovakia, he got sent to England, and I got sent to England. Neither one of us knew it, and because he was in one town, and I happened to be in a town near it, and we came out of a pub, walking down the street, and here he is, and we laughed about it. And then we said goodbye because we figured we were going home from England. Sailed into Boston Harbor on this ship, and the little ship came out, and they were singing on, some nurse was on there, and her husband was on the troop ship, and she was singing to him, says, "I'll be home for Christmas. You can plan on me. I'll never forget that." And I turned around, bumped right into Jackson. So we were
You guys were on the same...
4 different times on the same troop ship. We
Wow.
got split up 4 different times, and we got back together. That's really, we always like, he just passed away here recently, Jackson. Yeah. Yeah. But of all the things that I will always be embedded in my mind was, I'll never forget that family when we stopped in front of that house. I'll never forget that as long as I live. Yeah, and the man came out. They were peering out the curtains. Our unit had stopped. We were way out ahead of a lot of outfits, and we stopped for a rest right in front of this little house. And we saw him peering out the window, and out comes this elderly guy, and he walks up to Colonel Bennett, and he says, "Are you Americans?" And Colonel Bennett says, "We sure are." He says, "Are you here to stay?" He says, "Oh yes, the whole American Army is right behind us." We're here to stay. So we turned around and went back in the house. When he came out of the house, I never forgot it. There's this man and woman and 3 children. One was a little girl. She wasn't very high, little girl. They were all clinging to their parents because they looked frightened, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, the little girl, she looks up at the sky. She said, she'd see her looking up at that sky. She had never seen the outside. She was born in the garret in the house.
Uh-huh.
So the old man turned around and he says to Colonel Bennett, these people are all Jews. He says, we've been hiding them since 1940.
Oh.
Since 1940. Here it is, 44. Been hiding them. Yeah. Yeah, and then...
Did you see any of the concentration camps?
Only one. We were going through Leipzig, and I remember the fences were all torn down as we went by, and the people were walking all over the place. They were nothing but skin and bones, and they had no clothes on.
Mm-hmm.
And our colonel got confronted by a German, well, they call them a burgomaster. They're like a mayor.
Yep.
And he complained to our colonel that these people were walking around in the village scared people. So Colonel Bennett took his 45 out and he put it right up the guy's head, and the guys grabbed him. He said, no, Colonel, no, don't do it. But he said, you know what I felt like doing? I felt like giving every one of those people a gun and turn them loose on the Germans.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he was so angry. I never saw a colonel so angry as he was that. But he pretended like, you know, they didn't know anything that was going on. Mm-hmm. Anybody would know. You could smell the place.
Mm-hmm.
When you...
Now, did you have any idea that there were concentration camps?
Oh, yeah, we knew there were camps. Yeah, we saw another one at, where was that? Was it Belsen? Can't remember now, a little town we went through on the outside. There was this smokestack and fences all around it. You know what they were. They were all
Mm-hmm.
over the place. They had them everywhere. You couldn't hold all those Jews in one camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were everywhere, but I only saw a couple myself.
Mm-hmm.
They asked for volunteers to go in, and they fed them sea rations, and some of them ate too much, and they died from it.
Yeah.
They weren't used to food.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, they died from the food. Yeah. Not from the food. They died because they were malnutrition.
Right, it was just too much for them.
Yeah. Too much for their bodies, yeah.
Now, when you got back home, did you make use of the GI Bill at all?
Yes, when I got back, I bought my home under the GI Bill, 4.5% it was. It was $49 a month, and that included your taxes and your insurance and everything on the house. That was back in 1947.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 4.5% I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
4.5%.
Did you make use of that 5220 club at all?
Only drew one check.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and got a job. $20 a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's the. I only do one check.
Did you join any veterans organizations?
Yeah, joined the American Legion and the VFW.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you stayed in contact with some of the fellows you were in the service
Yeah,
with?
my very best friend just passed away about a month ago. Him and I, we were, whenever we'd get a break, you know, he was in another forward observer unit. And whenever we come back for a rest, first thing we do is look each other up, and we were close. He just passed away. He was with Colonel Bennett the day they went up the bluff. He had it a lot rougher than me.
Mm-hmm. Did you attend any reunions at all?
Yep, been to 4 reunions. Went to the 50th at Tulsa, Oklahoma. My children bought my wife and I a ticket out. We went to Russ and Bonnie. That's a fellow that just died.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed with them, and then we drove down to Tulsa. It was a 4-hour drive. He lives in New Hampton, Missouri, and that was a big one. Colonel Bennett, at that time, or General Bennett, he couldn't come because he had a shoulder operation, but it was a big, that was the 50th, 1994, yeah.
Now, how do you think your time in the service changed or affected your life?
Well, you know, I didn't think too much about God when I was in the service until we got in tight spots.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it gave me you know, a reverent fear of God, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing that's gone away in our country. I don't people fear God at all anymore. They think they're gods themselves, and it changed my life because Russ McGee, the fellow I just told you about, my very best friend that died, I went out to visit him one night, and we sat out on his fence. He had a few cows and that, and it was after dark, and we sat there on the fence talking, and he says, you know, Willie, he says, he stuttered, he says, Willie, he says, you know, I met Bonnie, you know, and I fell in love, and I wanted to get married right away, but she says, no, you smoke and you drink. He said, you know what, Willie, he says, he stuttered, he says, I quit, he said, you know, I affected my life deeply because I was not a Christian, and I wondered what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'd have died on Omaha Beach that day, I wouldn't be with God because the only time I thought about God is when I got in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way it changed my life. I come back, I had a wife and 4 children to take care of and that, and I was not exactly...
Okay.
Yeah, I knew that I needed to make a change in my life. I was not doing the things that I should. I was not a spiritual leader in my family, and I realized that there was something wrong in my life. And one day I just told the Lord, I said, Lord, I give up. I can't do it without you. And I admitted to the Lord I was a sinner and that I needed my sins forgiven, and I believe that when he died on the cross, he died for my sins. I told the Lord that.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing happened, no flashlights or bulbs or anything, but, you know, once you tell God that you believe in his word and what he did when he sent his son to die for you on the cross, I believe when you tell God that, your life has to be changed, because the Bible says that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that if you would believe in him, you wouldn't perish, you know.
Mm-hmm.
For whosoever lives and believes in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. And I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's our only hope today. I want to say a word about my country. My country's been good to me. America has been everything to me. I love my country, but I'm very disturbed about the way I see our country going. And I wish that all the young people would stop to think there's a possibility, the way things are going, that we can lose our freedom. And we ought to thank God every day that we can get up in the morning and we can have the freedom to do as we want, to worship, to if you want to speak against your president, you can. But I believe we ought to pray for our president. And he needs a lot of help, just like all of us do. And I don't believe he's taking us in the right direction right now, but we need to pray for our nation, all right. And the Word of God is what really changed my life. When I started reading the Bible and I started seeing, my gosh, you're talking about things here, God, way ahead of the news people today. If I want to know news what's tomorrow, all I got to do is open that Bible and it tells me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's what I believe in now. And I thank God that he spared my life.
Okay.
I don't know how I made it all the way when so many people died. I guess someone had to die and some had to live. And God spared my life. So I give God all the glory and all the credit. And, I just thank God for that I was born in a country like this where we're free. People better wake up.
All right. Thank you for your interview.
Thank you.